This is probably going to be the last video of my road trip, as I'm on the last leg of the trip. So I'm driving from Boise, Idaho to Portland, Oregon. And Portland is where I'm moving until further notice. And I've been doing these videos just when I'm inspired to talk about certain things that come to me over the course of this road trip. So I haven't made one in a few days, but so many things are coming to me as this journey, this cross-country journey is coming to an end. And some topics that I've been thinking about are, one being like human connection and the power of just a simple touch, because we're essentially social beings, so we thrive off of connection, and there's no connection like the connection that's fostered by human touch. So like empathetic, compassionate, loving human touch. And human touch is a powerful force, and that's why it can be so healing, and that's why it can also create traumatic experiences. If it's, if you go against people's personal boundaries and do things without consent, that can be traumatic. So it's powerful, and it goes in both ways. But it can be very healing, and in general it's very healing, especially with compassionate people, empathetic people, when it comes from a loving place. So just like, it's as simple as a hug too. Just having a long hug with someone who you care about, or even just someone who you're having a good conversation with. In the West, we have this like weird thing where no one touches each other, and like men are afraid to touch each other, for example, things like that. And it's with that, you're like starved of that human connection. So yeah, I would say just hug someone. The next person you talk to, just give them a hug. And I think, I'm not sure of the exact number, but after like 20 seconds of a hug, you start to release, I think it's dopamine. So some form of happiness chemicals get released when you hug someone for like 20 seconds or so. So try that out. Human connection is amazing. And that also leads me to talking about how much we all really have in common. So even though people are different everywhere, it's kind of trivial to get hung up on the differences of people. And I've found myself in the past saying like, oh, I don't have much in common with these people, that kind of separation, divisive kind of thinking. But recently, what's been coming to me is that as humans on planet Earth, we have so much more in common than we have as differences between us. So just think about it this way. We're on this planet, there's billions of stars, I don't know how many galaxies, millions of galaxies, and there's an unlimited amount of dimensions, and who knows about parallel universes and all of that stuff. So if you factor all of that into account, just think about the chances of you and someone else being a human being on planet Earth in this moment. So with that big picture kind of thinking, we all have so much in common, like the vast majority in common, and all of the differences between us are trivial. So even like if you have another religion than someone, or if you live in another country than someone else, it's trivial differences compared to the grand scheme of existence. So think about it that way. And that form of thinking, it allows me to relate to more people. It allows me to relate to everyone and have compassion for everyone I come across, every single human being. And I look at them like, hey, I'm a human being, you're a human being. We're on planet Earth right now. We got that much in common. That's cool. Let's cooperate. So it kind of fosters that mentality. Yeah. And another thing I've been thinking about is life is about experience. And doing this road trip over the last 10 or 11 days, I lost track of time, it reinforces that idea within me, and it confirms that idea of life being about experiences. And travel really is an experience, and it fosters new experiences, and it puts you out of your comfort zone, and you experience so many different things, so many unique things, because you're going to different places and every place is unique. Every place has strengths and weaknesses. Every place has its little idiosyncrasies and things like that. So it expands your experiences, and that's a beautiful thing. And travel really blows open your perspective. And that's one of the reasons why I love travel, because it's really mind-blowing. And it expands my sense of possibility, and it expands my perspective and expands my perceptions. So, yeah, travel to new places, do new things, experience life. And if you're not in a position to travel now, of course I would say to work towards it, but you can also expand your experiences in terms of ideas, in terms of the internal environment. You can do that too. Like when I was living in New York City and working a corporate job and didn't have much travel opportunity, I would read books, I would meditate, I would explore ideas, and then I would explore my immediate surroundings too, physically. But when you're not in a position to travel physically, you can do other kinds of experience generating and find unique experiences in your immediate vicinity, and going within for those different experiences to really expand your perception and your perspective on things. So experience is not only what you do in the outside world, it's also an internal thing. And so think of it that way. And I'm all about experiences. I would rather spend money on experiences than things. And I think this is one of my first blog posts I've ever put out on Feeling Good, Feeling Great. There's so much science that backs up that experiences are more fulfilling and create more happiness than buying things. So let's say if you buy a new car, even a fancy car, you buy a new Ferrari, you get that immediate rush, which is almost like a drug. So you get that quick high, and then maybe a couple months later, it's just your new Ferrari. You don't have that high, doesn't last for months. Like it might last a few days or a few weeks, depending on who you are. But after a few months, it's just going to be your Ferrari. You know, you're not going to have that same feeling about it. And you're going to need something else. You're going to need your next quick fix, your next material fix to bring you back to that high again. But experiences are completely different. When you spend money on experiences, you have the fulfillment or the happiness of looking forward to it and planning it. And then you have the actual experience, and you have how the experience makes you a more experienced person. So with experiences, you get more experience, and you learn things, and so these experiences stay with you. They become part of your character. They become part of who you are. And that's why it's worthwhile and fulfilling to spend your money on experiences instead of just material things and stuff. So that's what I'm all about. And I have a couple simple things. You know, I have an iPhone, I have a laptop, but I don't buy that much stuff. And especially with traveling the world for like 5-6 months, just with a backpack and a little duffel bag, you get to the point where you evaluate every material purchase you make. Like when I don't even think I bought anything physical that besides like food. But you have to really evaluate, like, do I really need this, and what purpose is this going to serve? Because especially as Americans, we get into this mentality of constantly accumulating things, just stuff, and it really weighs you down. And that form of minimalism is freeing because your possessions don't possess you. So everything that you own, you appreciate, because everything that you own, you know it has a purpose. So you're more grateful for the things that you do have. as opposed to someone who's just constantly buying and accumulating things. They're not grateful for those things. They're not grateful for each purpose that everything serves, and everything doesn't have a purpose. Some of it might be useful and they might neglect it. So think of it that way. It's all about experience. And yeah, so I'm just really enjoying this road trip, getting used to driving. At this point, there's a lot to see, but there are some stretches of open road where it got a little monotonous. But I got good music, been listening to podcasts, audiobooks, doing some meditation, just having time to myself. It's really a beautiful thing, and I'm happy that I did this cross-country road trip. And I recommend everyone to do something like this. It can also be like a rite of passage. Like if you grew up in the US, I would say do a cross-country road trip at least once in your life, because how are you going to talk about a country that you haven't even been through? You know, if you're from New Jersey, for example, and you've never driven across the country, how can you have an opinion on the rest of the country if you've never been through it and been in it, you know? And the same applies to Canada, too, which is another huge country. Like, if you drive from, like, Halifax, Nova Scotia to Vancouver, that's longer than coast to coast in the U.S. So that's an even crazier road trip. Yeah, I highly recommend everyone to do something like that. If you live in another country, you know, do a road trip across that country, or to even other countries, because European countries are pretty small in general, so you can do a multi-country road trip. And it becomes like a rite of passage, and you experience so many different things, and you realize that it's all about the journey, not necessarily just the destination. Because when you get to that point, and it's not even a point because it's a journey, when you realize that it's really about the process and the journey, it creates more happiness and more presence. As opposed to being fixated on something in the future, you surrender to the moment. And yeah, I'm going to end with that. Surrender to the moment and enjoy the journey, okay? Because, yeah, that's a good general takeaway from this. I'll say it again. Surrender to the moment and enjoy the journey, all right? Peace, peace, much love. And one love, baby.